We are in Lord Varys' endgame now. In the first video, I told you why I think Lord Varys made his grand confession to Sir Kevan Lannister. In the second video, I told you my thoughts on the identity of the false dragon young GRIFF. Now, in this final video, it is time to discuss why Varys is so invested in placing a fake Targaryen on the Iron Throne. If young GRIFF is not the son of Rhaegar, then who is he? Where did Varys find him? And why is Varys shaping him to rule Westeros? Pulling back the curtain to take a peek at Lord Varys' past might reveal one of this series' most sinister subplots thus far. But before we get to the theory, please do me the honor of liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications. And now, on with the video. There is a moment in Clash where a private conversation between Tyrion and Lord Varys takes a dark turn. It is a subtle moment where Tyrion's tongue almost gets him into more trouble than he knows. The conversation takes place on the night Janos Slynt was arrested and shipped off to the Wall with the doomed Alardim. As the two small council members discuss the night's events and ponder Varys' riddle about the perception of power, their talk veers into strange, uncharted territory. Quote, "People have called me a half-man too, yet I think the gods have been kinder to me. I am small, my legs are twisted, and women do not look upon me with any great yearning, yet I'm still a man. Shay is not the first to grace my bed, and one day I may take a wife and sire a son. If the gods are good, he'll look like his uncle and think like his father. You have no such hope to sustain you. Dwarves are a jape of the gods, but men make eunuchs. Who cut you, Varys? When and why? Who are you, truly?" The eunuch's smile never flickered, but his eyes glittered with something that was not laughter. "You are kind to ask, my lord, but my tale is long and sad, and we have treasons to discuss." Tyrion's tactless question cuts deep, deeper than he could have possibly imagined. That glitter in Varys' eye was an emotion we have yet to see the amiable spy master express. That was the glint of anger. While Varys is no stranger to being mocked for his status as a eunuch, Tyrion unknowingly seized on a point that is often overlooked when people insult Varys for his lack of a manhood: the fact that he cannot produce a child of his own. To a highborn, especially someone like Tyrion, who is a lion of Casterly Rock, Lord Varys not being able to have children would be of no significance. Varys was a former slave that managed to scheme his way up from the streets of Pentos to a place in Westerosi high society. If he died without passing on his name, well, no great loss. North or south, they sing no songs for spiders. Tyrion, like so many others, has not considered the possibility that Varys might actually have a name, a noble name, one that he is proud of. Varys goes by many names in different disguises, but if we look underneath the perfumes and powders, we may find his true identity. Remember that Varys claims he traveled as an orphan through the Free Cities where he learned mummery. He lived in the company of a Braavosi swordsman, and then turned a career of stealing letters into a criminal empire with agents called mice. This is very reminiscent of Arya Stark's journey throughout the series so far. Both Arya and Varys were orphaned. Both characters have had protection from Braavosi swordsmen. Both trained as mummers to better hide their identities and their acting skills. Varys trained little mice to steal secrets. Arya was a little mouse that stole secrets while in Harrenhal. Quote, "On the road, Arya had felt like a sheep, but Harrenhal turned her into a mouse. She was a gray mouse in her scratchy wool shift, and, like a mouse, she kept to the crannies and crevices and dark holes of the castle, scurrying out of the way of the mighty." This parallel could very well mean that Varys is of noble birth, just like Arya. It may be that his family was brought low by the royal family like the Lannisters did to the Starks. The Targaryens would still hold the throne at the time Varys was Arya's age. You can be sure that House Targaryen has driven many houses into extinction during his 300-year reign. But of all House Targaryen's troublesome vassals, there was only one house that dared to challenge their right for the Iron Throne: the renegade house Blackfyre. House Blackfyre was a cadet branch of House Targaryen formed over 100 years ago by a bastard son of Aegon the Unworthy and Queen Daena Targaryen. His name was Daemon, and he took the surname Blackfyre after his father gifted him the Targaryen ancestral sword of the same name. King Daeron, Daemon's true-born brother, was distrusted by many members of his court. This was in part due to Aegon the Unworthy making base accusations and spreading false rumors about his son. Some began to see Daemon as Aegon's rightful heir, though he was only a legitimized bastard. Aegor Rivers, another bastard son of Aegon the Unworthy, urged his brother to rebel and take the crown, and thus the first Blackfyre rebellion began. Daemon's sigil was a black dragon upon a red field. The realm was nearly riven in two, as some supported the red dragon while others supported the black. Daemon's rebellion ended in death and defeat upon the red grass field. Daemon and several of his sons were killed in a volley of arrows. His surviving heirs and supporters fled across the narrow sea in disgrace. This was not the end of House Blackfyre, however. Time and again, Blackfyre heirs have attempted to invade Westeros and to take the Iron Throne. This small rebel house presented the greatest threat the Targaryens had ever known. That is, until Robert Baratheon raised his warhammer to avenge his lady love. There have been 5 Blackfyre rebellions in total. The last attempt was made in the year 260 during the War of the Ninepenny Kings. Maelys Blackfyre, also known as Maelys the Monstrous, was a terrifying figure. He was born with a grotesquely huge torso and arms. He was also born with a parasitic twin. A second head, no bigger than a fist, protruded from his neck. Some believed Maelys swallowed his twin in the womb, which earned him the title of Kinslayer. It was said he killed a horse with a single blow to the skull. Then in turn, he killed his own cousin, twisting the man's head until it ripped free from his shoulders. During the War of the Ninepenny Kings, Sir Barristan Selmy cut a bloody path through the ranks of the Golden Company to slay Maelys, thus ending the male line of House Blackfyre. We are told in A Dance with Dragons that the female line of House Blackfyre still exists, so the reader is led to believe that the name Blackfyre died with Maelys upon the Stepstones. But death isn't the only way that a bloodline can come to an end, which brings us back to Lord Varys. We are told when Varys was young, he was castrated and his private parts burned as part of some sort of arcane art. We've seen a similar blood magic ritual before, when Melisandre burned 3 leeches engorged with king's blood to cast a spell. There is power in king's blood, Melisandre believes. Other magic users may hold this superstition as well, which is why the mysterious man chose Lord Varys for his spell. It's because Lord Varys is a Blackfyre. Sir Barristan Selmy once told Lord Stannis Baratheon that the rotten King Aerys' rule began with Varys, which means upon arriving at court to fulfill his new position, Varys did everything he could to bring the Targaryens to ruin. Aerys had always been prone to paranoia. Varys, with all of his grim tidings and his wriggling worm tongue, finally pushed Aerys over the edge. Varys being a Blackfyre provides a motive for his insidious actions. He has been working towards revenge, doing what Arya Stark would do for House Lannister if given the chance. Vengeance as a negative is one of this series' major themes. We have seen several characters consumed and doomed by their thirst for vengeance. In the Circle of Power in King's Landing, Varys and Littlefinger might just be the 2 biggest influencers in the game. Littlefinger's motives are also rooted in revenge. Before he was a simpleton for Sansa, he was leering after her lady mother. But Brandon Stark, who is literally an alpha wolf stereotype, beat and embarrassed the callow boy. Littlefinger has harbored hatred ever since. While Littlefinger has climbed the ladder of chaos to get back at all the rich and popular kids that made him feel inferior, Varys has darker motives. He wants revenge for the destruction of his family and the horrible life he had to lead because of it. Varys being the scion of a rival to House Targaryen also gives more credence to the theory that young Griff is not Aegon Targaryen. Because if Varys was a Blackfyre, then he would have no interest in Targaryen restoration. He would not seek to restore the house he helped to destroy. He would keep their name in their castle, but their bloodline must come to an end. The boy called young Griff is not Aegon, son of Rhaegar. Well, his first name may be Aegon, but his real surname might just be Mopatis. In A Dance with Dragons, Illyrio tells Tyrion of his second wife, a woman named Sarah. He met her in Lys, where she was a slave in service at a pillow house. This is the same free city where Varys is said to be from. Sarah was described as beautiful with blue eyes and silver gold hair, features familiar to those of Illyrian descent. Illyrio was so in love with her, he purchased her and brought her to Pentos to be his wife. Their marriage was tragically cut short as Sarah died due to the Grey Plague, a horrible disease that turns its victims into stone. All that remains of her is a locket that contains her image, her stone hands which Illyrio keeps in his manse, and the child they made together. Varys and Illyrio would have needed a child to fit their grand scheme, one with the appropriate Valyrian features. Instead of searching all the free cities for such a child, they need not look further than Illyrio's own manse. While aboard the Shy Maid, Tyrion finds, quote, one of Illyrio's chests had been packed with a child's clothing, musty but well made. The chest comes from the many supplies Illyrio sent with Tyrion on his journey to join Griff and his crew, which means a child lived at Illyrio's manse at some point in the past. These are not newly bought items. These clothes belong to Illyrio and Sarah's son and heir. Sarah is perhaps Varys' sister or a close relative with the surname Blackfyre. They don't have to be brother and sister for the theory to work, just close kin. Supporting Varys' scheme to put the boy called Aegon on the Iron Throne would explain those depths of affection Illyrio mentioned to Tyrion. It's a fascinating theory, one that you can consider the dark version of R+L=J. Typically, the hidden heir emerges to reclaim their father's throne and set the realm to rights. They are an honest monarch, one that rules wisely and justly. Varys has brought nothing but rot and ruin to Westeros since he has arrived, and now he plans to sit his pretender upon a throne of lies. One drawback is that there is no strong evidence that supports any of this. Sure, there is the lies and Arbor Gold theory, the clanking dragon theory, the theory about Rhaegar's rubies, predictions of false dragons and Mummer's dragons, but all of these feel circumstantial at best. Even with a theory like R+L=J, there are strong facts to back it up. If you ignore every aspect of that theory, you can't deny one thing. Either Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark consensually ran away together, or he kidnapped her by force. Roughly 9 months later, Lyanna is dead in her bed of blood and Ned returns to Winterfell with a baby. At best, we can create a timeline to see if the Blackfyre theory may be possible. Luckily, George R.R. Martin himself gave an interview where he may have offered up just enough information for us to sketch a rough outline of the life of Lord Varys. Here is the quote from the interview.
Well, Varys says the fire speaks back when he's telling the story, which is then being retold, and it's 30 years later. You might tell a story, something happened to you 20 years ago, and then if I look at a time machine, would it be exactly what you remember, or?
It's been 30 years since Varys allegedly heard the voice in the flames. Now, this could be an arbitrary number Martin threw out for the purposes of discussion, but I've noticed in these past years he has been less tight-lipped about spoilers. He has confirmed Euron has gone to Valyria. He's told us about the Hold the Door moment and how Stannis will burn his daughter, how Jon is a fire wight, how the Song of Ice and Fire is about the others and Daenerys. This interview could be another moment of Martin openly sharing a detail he has yet to reveal in the books. It is currently the year 300 in Westeros. If the night Varys heard the voice happened 30 years ago, that would place the event in the year 270. He would have been prepubescent at the time, making him about 12 years old or younger, which means he would have been born near the year 258. This would make Varys around 40 years old at the start of the story. Let's use Martin's quote and the dates we've established to build a rough timeline of the life and lives of Lord Varys. Between the years 257 and 259, Varys is born. Determining his parentage is difficult. With each successive rebellion, we learn little and less about the members of House Blackfyre. We don't know who Aegon Blackfyre married, nor do we know exactly how many sons he had besides Daemon. Then there's an entire generation of Blackfyres that we know nothing about. He may well be the son of Maelys the Monstrous, or some other Blackfyre heir we have yet to hear of. As mentioned before, Sarah is a Blackfyre relative. Being his sister is possible, but not necessary for the theory to work. The year 260, the War of the Ninepenny Kings, also known as the Fifth Blackfyre Rebellion, begins and ends. Maelys is killed by Sir Barristan Selmy. This is likely why Varys arranged for Barristan to be ousted from the Kingsguard. It was a petty act of revenge. This is also why Barristan is sent to Daenerys and not to young Griff. Barristan has a legendary reputation, which would lend legitimacy to young Griff's claim. Yet Varys holds resentment towards Barristan for slaying his relative, and he wants nothing to do with Targaryen accomplices. Barristan is also too honorable of a man to fit in with the cast of characters Varys has in mind for his grand Mummer's farce. The year 266. The Band of Nine collapses. Following the failed rebellion, the remaining members had no interest in Westeros, so they would have no interest in the remaining Blackfyre heirs. They were Blackfyres, and Maelys' failed rebellion doomed the Band of Nine's entire mission. Remember, Westeros was just the first of many places they wanted to conquer. As for the Blackfyre heirs, I believe that this is the first time after a failed rebellion there are no adults, only children. The Blackfyre heirs were separated and sold, Varys to a mummer's troop, Sarah to a pillow house in Lice. Grazdan Moeras threatens Daenerys with a similar fate when she marches her Unsullied to Yunkai. Quote, "There are pleasure houses in Lice and Tyrosh where men would pay handsomely to bed the last Targaryen." This may be a hint at the fate of the last female Blackfyre. Varys will be around 10 years old at the time, the same age as Arya was when she began her journey in A Game of Thrones. The years 266 through 269. Varys travels the free cities with the Mummer's troop. He learns their ways, which will become useful later in his life. Through Arya, we can see what Varys may have experienced during this troubling time of his youth. How his heart hardened with hatred after what his family was put through. The year 269. Varys is sold by his master to a mysterious man. This may be the biggest hint that Varys has royal blood, because why else would a mage spend so much money to purchase him from a master mummer when young slaves can be bought elsewhere? And without getting too grimdark, I'm sure there are other ways he could have acquired a child for free. Like Brown Ben Plum spotting Tyrion at the slave auction, this unknown mage knew who Varys was and was determined to buy him. The identity of this man could potentially be Marwyn the Mage, a master of the Citadel. He is known for studying magic, including the darker aspects. He has traveled across much of the known world, including Ashai by the Shadow. It is even said he makes sacrifices to the gods. Such a man like Marwyn would know the saying that there is power in king's blood. As a maester, he may be curious to keep track of the history of Westerosi nobles, even those like the Blackfyre pretenders. Perhaps he tracked the boy down and cut him to ensure that Westeros would never be plagued by another Blackfyre rebellion. It is suspected that the Maesters have conspired against the Blood of the Dragon before. Killing the boy would not be necessary so long as he was made to be ineffectual. I assume Marwyn is in his late 50s, early 60s when we first meet him in Feast. If true, he would be in his late 20s in the year 269. Old enough to have traveled extensively and to have experimented in magic. The years 267 through 278. Varys continues to wander the free cities. Eventually, he befriends Illyrio and the two rise in power. Illyrio tells Tyrion that during this time, Varys was homeless, sleeping in sewers at night and prowling the rooftops by day. Illyrio goes on to say that he was nearly as poor, wearing soiled silks and living by his blade. But if Illyrio was so poor, how could he afford a marble statue carved in his image when he was only 16 years old? Quote, "Varys came from Myr." So he did. I met him not long after he arrived, one step ahead of the slavers. By day he slept in the sewers, by night he prowled the rooftops like a cat. I was near as poor, a bravo in soiled silks, living by my blade. Perhaps you chanced to glimpse the statue by the pool? Pytho Malanon carved that when I was 6 and 10, a lovely thing, though now I weep to see it. Illyrio had to have considerable money to afford such a lavish likeness. Martin confirmed this in an interview from 2002. He says, quote, "As for Illyrio, he was wealthy but not near as powerful as he is today. Only with the help of Varys did he reach a position where the daughter of a magister was willing to marry him." One of Illyrio's flaws as a player in the Game of Thrones is that he is simply not adept at telling lies on the fly. He may be able to outsmart someone with the wits like Viserys Targaryen, but others like Daenerys and Tyrion can see right through him. Illyrio wants Tyrion to believe that he started from the bottom, but that's not true. Varys is a misfit, which makes him good at spotting other misfits. This is how he found all the members aboard the Shy Maid. Illyrio says he doesn't know why Varys chose him to be his protector, but it's likely that Illyrio is just another misfit. Varys saw that Illyrio came from a wealthy family, but that wealth was on the decline. So Varys helped him grow wealthy again. Illyrio Mopatis and Coriolanus Snow have that in common, and no, Coriolanus Snow is not a northern bastard. With this new wealth and influence, Illyrio marries the sister of the Prince of Pentos, but then she dies. Varys himself would now have the resources necessary to find his missing relative. This is how Illyrio meets Sarah. The Prince of Pentos might see this as a step down, but if you think about it, if Sarah is a Blackfyre, then Illyrio is simply marrying the relative of another royal. This time he's not just marrying the sister of a prince, but an actual princess. The year 278, Varys is invited to King's Landing. He would be around 20 years old at the time, of a similar age as Jon Connington, which ties into what was said about King Aerys wanting youth and vigor on his council. The year 283, the Grey Plague hits Pentos. What's strange is that this would be a major event in Pentoshi history, but we are not given an exact year that it happened. Why would Martin not tell us the year? Sarah dies due to the Grey Plague, but not before giving birth to a son. The boy would grow up to be called young Griff. This is also the year of the fall of House Targaryen, the years 288 through the year 300. Sarah and Illyrio's son is given over to Jon Connington to be raised in a controlled environment to produce the ideal king. The year 300. The 300th year since Aegon's conquest and the present of the story. Varys will be in his early 40s, young Griff around 17 years old, or near enough it makes no matter. It seems to all fit, if I did my maths accordingly. Here's something to consider. Martin said Illyrio grew incredibly wealthy with Lord Varys' help. He has grown so wealthy that he is able to give away 3 dragon's eggs to Daenerys as a bridal gift. Illyrio expected Daenerys to die upon the Dothraki Sea, which means he never expected to see those dragon's eggs again. If Daenerys had sold those eggs for money, she could have been rich for the rest of her life. And Illyrio is so rich that he can just give them away without a second thought. Illyrio in Pentos is richer than the crown of Westeros. You would have to wonder then why Varys would accept the role of spy master in King's Landing when working with Illyrio was much more lucrative and more illustrious. His position in Pentos seemed more secure than in the Red Keep, where he is loathed by nearly everyone around him. Varys must have an ulterior motive for going to Westeros. Considering Aerys heard of Varys' skills and requested him specifically, it leads one to wonder if Varys had his own agents whispering his name into the Mad King's ear. Unlike other Blackfyre pretenders before him, Varys didn't seek to lead the Golden Company into another failed rebellion. As a eunuch, he knew no one would follow him into war. He would have to devise a different path to the Iron Throne. Power resides where men believe it resides, no more, no less. In learning this lesson, Varys realized if one desired to take the seat of the Targaryens, one would have to become a Targaryen. Lord Varys has played a deeper game than anyone could have ever known. Even Illyrio is unlikely to know all the threads in the spider's vast web. Jon Connington, a character who has a major part in Varys' design, is definitely in the dark about the true identity of young Griff. Connington wants to avenge Rhaegar's memory, to atone for losing the Battle of the Bells. He would not take part in a plan that included some feigned boy pretending to be the son of his beloved Rhaegar. But he is so desperate for a second chance that he is now susceptible to the lies of Lord Varys. Before I close this video, I want to share with you another bit of real history. The story of the Chinese eunuch Zhao Gao. Zhao Gao was an official in the Qin dynasty. He served as a counselor during the reigns of 3 emperors. During the reign of the 2nd emperor, Zhao had brought a deer into the throne room to be presented to the court. Zhao called the deer a horse, but the emperor, laughing, said it was a deer. Zhao then turned to all of his fellow counselors and posed the question, was the animal a deer or was it a horse? Those who called the animal a horse were spared. Those who called the animal for what it was, a deer, were brutally murdered. Through careful cunning, Zhao Gao had many of the ruling Qin family eliminated in similar gruesome fashion, until the 3rd emperor, aware of Zhao's treacherous nature, had him executed to stop his reign of lies. It is believed that Zhao Gao was a surviving member of the Zhao state, which the Qin dynasty had previously destroyed, and Zhao's actions were all out of revenge. So duplicitous was he that Zhao Gao convinced the kingdom that a deer was a horse. Anyone that did not believe the lie was disloyal and would have to die. Perhaps Zhao Gao is the inspiration for Lord Varys, the infamous eunuch and royal counselor in Westeros who is trying to convince the realm that a black dragon is a red one, and to finalize his revenge for the fall of House Blackfyre. And that's it. That's the life and lies of Lord Varys. What was once supposed to be 1 video quickly spiraled into 3. But as the saying goes, what a tangled web we weave, when we practice to deceive. I want to give a big thank you to everyone who has stuck with me through each video in this series. It's been my most ambitious project so far. Thank you to everyone who has watched my content, both the old videos and the new. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, it's time to call the banners. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below who you think Lord Varys is and what their motives may be. Don't forget to ring the bell to turn on notifications, but wait for John Connington to leave the room. He's not a fan of the sound. Again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all for the next one.